Hello and welcome back to the Getae Abridged campaign. Last time we invaded the Leugoz to our northwest. We took one of their territories easily, but the fight for another territory proved to be very close indeed. It came down to the wire and we just about won. Then we secured some peace with them, so now we're going to have a little bit of peace and quiet, during which our main goal is to kill the discontented locals. I gave them a couple of turns to build up a rebellion. That increases public order by like 40. But they've still only got a few units, so we can just auto-resolve them to death. And we can take a peek here at what my new army looks like, or we could before I switch to that dead garrison. Basically, I've got a ton of Germanic levy units, and I think I'm going to be swapping a couple more of them out for some horse archers instead, on the off chance that they're more useful. Basically, this army isn't as strong as the one we had before when we invaded here, but there's no choice at this stage. It would take us a long time to get one that was as strong as the one we had before, and we are playing fast and loose as always. Our new goal is to attack Chronos up there. That is the last part of Lugia, the province we're currently in, and we need to take it to stop them from spreading Germanic culture, and that will over time allow us to secure this place. So off we go. We walk up to the border here, now with the newly reformed army, as I mentioned, with just a few Germanic levies and a bunch of horse archers. And I've also got my spy checking out what's going to be stopping us, and the answer is quite a lot of stuff. They're the classic one region faction with two stacks thing, the old AI cheating basically. So we're going to have to deal with all this stuff with our one army that may not even be a match for one of theirs, I'm not quite sure. Still, I declare war on them. I actually waited a couple of turns on their border, because what I want them to do is go away from their settlement so we can fight them closer to home. That way, if things go badly, we can go back and replenish easier. Plus, by waiting, I had time to recruit a baggage train, which I thought might be useful for advancing deep into these big provinces where we might actually run out of supplies. Some bad news at the start of the next term. Our one trading partner got taken out by the Royal Scythians. So now we're not trading with anyone, and this faction that really hates us is across our eastern border, so that's probably not going to be good news. And it's certainly not good news for our plan to do the bonus objectives. Basically, the trading one, of all things, is looking like it's just going to be impossible. I can't even get non-aggression or any relations whatsoever with any faction around me, so far, even paying money. As for the war, with the enemy coming towards us, as I hoped, I'm going to set up an ambush beside the road and see what happens. I think now this was probably a waste of time. It would have been better to just set up just outside of their movement range so they came towards me, and then I could night attack in my turn. But we're going for an ambush here, and that was mainly because I didn't realise at this stage ambushing doesn't actually reduce enemy morale. It's a moot point actually, because in this case we don't get an ambush. We do end up fighting just one of the two enemy armies, but it's an interception, so this is like a failed ambush that turns into a regular field battle. So it's just a straight up fight, but it looks like we do have the advantage with our one-on-one fight, and we'll need it. We need to come out of this battle in really good condition, because of course the other army is nearby, so we're probably going into another battle very soon. As you can probably tell, this is a night battle, which I think gives us some advantage. I've said before that night battles don't do anything in 1 versus 1s, but they do in principle give the enemy a morale debuff, although I think the debuff might be 0 technically. They have a thing there saying that they're unready for night battles, but I remember checking in some of the tooltips and finding that it didn't actually change anything. Although that said, we are playing a mod, so who knows how that changes things, I don't know. Basically, the enemy don't seem that much more eager to rout in night battles from my limited experience, whereas in something like Three Kingdoms they very obviously do, because the effect is quite large. Now, as for the fighting, we've got some Jav Cav attacking us from the front. Just going to tank the Javs on our shields, and our slingers will gradually kill the Jav Cav, so that's all fine. Meanwhile, they sent some melee Cav around to our right, but they were blocked by our Germanic levies, who luckily turned out to be good enough to stop this charge in its tracks, and then I deployed my general to counterattack. The rest of the enemy army isn't really doing anything, so this is perfectly safe. We're just going to take down these first couple of cav units on their own. I think the enemy are confused because you can see in the background there, I've got my horse archers skirmishing with a few guys, and the enemy are kind of rotating their formation to face those horse archers and focus on them. Got some Jav Cav in the back corner there as well. Basically the AI is probably aggroed in all sorts of directions, so they're not actually attacking our formation except with the Cav, and obviously the Cav get taken down as a result. They send over some troops around to our right to do much the same thing. They come over here, get stuck on our levies, and then get rear attacked by our cav, and that unit's going downtown very fast. So obviously this plan isn't working for the enemy, but that does not mean they're not going to try it again. This time they send in their general, and because I was out of position from the last wave, he actually comes in and flank attacks our main line. Luckily they're in shield wall and they seem unmoved by the attack, so the enemy general is stuck there for a bit, and we'll use that to attack him. We rear attack with our general, doesn't do all that much with the charge, but at least now the enemy general is going to be trapped between our hoplite-ish troops and the Germanic levies coming in behind them. Meanwhile the main line is advancing up and a fight is starting on the left. I think it's more of my levies fighting a few enemy units trying to outflank us there. We've got some jabs interspersed among our own troops for some close range support, but still in the background most of the enemy troops are just doing nothing. Well, at this stage it's only about half of their army because the first half's already been engaged and been destroyed while this nothing was being done. My horse archers took out a few of the enemy's ranged units, and here's the unit that's really aggroing everything. This one unit of horse archers just sitting at the back, doing nothing, drawing the enemy's attention, and that's just going great for us. So that gives us plenty of time and space to annihilate all the units that are attacking our main line, and one by one they get taken down. We have absolute numbers on our side, and the enemy units probably aren't all that good one-on-one either. Eventually the fight does break out again as the group stops being aggroed onto my one horse archer unit and splits off. Some of them come over to attack my other cavalry units, cleverly throwing javelins at them rather than running towards them, which actually does some good damage before I notice. And a few other units in another group went in to attack our main formation. However, it really was just a few units against most of my army concentrated together, so they're unlikely to achieve much, and indeed they didn't. You can see by the banners here, even with the night battle effect meaning we can't really see what's going on, that we're winning overall. Plus, while that was happening, I sent my baggage train around behind the enemy, and there's an example of the horses that don't have riders being able to take enemies down, which is quite handy. So yes, the baggage train was just taking out routers to make sure the enemy took massive losses, and then we gradually started another little fight to finish off the rest of the enemy. It was just a couple of units against the whole army, and yes, that went quite well in the end. I'm sure you'll take my word for it. Let's skip now to the aftermath. This battle was a heroic victory actually, which is just what we needed. We took minimal losses, the enemy army was totally wiped out, so that's going to even things out a bit. Now the remaining enemy army might even be weaker than what we have left, which is good because we'll also have to go on to fight a garrison even if we do overcome the next force. I also noted there our baggage train got something like 200 to 300 kills taking out enemies as they run away, so yes, the baggage train proving to be a useful and viable unit indeed. The enemy army, the other one, just moves towards us, no fight this turn. In fact, they actually fortified where they were standing there, so now we have to fight a more difficult battle to get around them and continue on. I wasn't too enthusiastic about this prospect, because when you attack a fort it gets towers and it's hard to outmaneuver the enemy because you're fighting them in a small space, so doing things like cavalry rear attacks becomes very difficult. As you can see, I was considering actually going back into our own territory to grab some replenishment, maybe do another ambush or something, but I didn't really have a very good feeling about doing that. I felt like it would be better to continue pushing on because time is a factor. We really need to complete this little bit of the campaign before someone else declares war on us. So I eventually just also fortified. Now, if the enemy want a fort battle, maybe it will be in my fort instead. While all this is going on, I'm putting together a new army down in the southwest, because if I successfully conquer Chronos, we will need to already be at war with the Scordissi in order to complete my little challenge of doing the bonus objectives. And while I don't really intend to win that war, since we're going to be at war with them, I needed some troops down here just in case something went down, so they're on the way. Also on the way is the enemy. The army we just beat comes back to attack us again, which causes the enemy's bigger army that was in the fort to be drawn out, so we've got a little siege draw-out situation going on. Surprisingly though, they've got a massive advantage. Their second army doesn't look too different to the first one, but apparently they're better or something, I don't know. The balance bar is saying fall back here. However, we are fortified ourselves, which may or may not give us some advantages, so I thought let's give it a go. So here it is, our little fort, we're all clustered into it, but handily we got some deployables. So one of the entrances, the entrance that most of the enemy are coming towards, is barricaded off. That'll slow them down. So to start with, we just have to fight that smaller first army. They sent some cav against us, but they're getting hit by slings from inside the fort, and they're going after my jav cav, who can jav them, so that's fine. Really, we're waiting for these guys to show up, the enemy's big second army, and they're all going to pile in against the eastern side of our camp, which, as I said, is the one that's barricaded off. A few guys are attacking the western entrance, but the troops we have there are enough to hold them off for now. The enemy's main force is leading with cav, and that's not going to achieve very much because they just can't go past the barricade, they'll just get stuck in front of the fort. However, they also have horse archers, and they are sneakily shooting at my baggage train. Didn't notice this happening, the baggage train's just glitching out in the corner, but that's very mean of the enemy. So these cav can't really get through the barricade. As far as I can tell, they can't actually attack it. It seems like infantry can attack barricades, the cav at least don't do their attack animations. But the barricade is still going down because my own towers are gradually setting the walls on fire, which is handy. Those towers, by the way, proved to be relatively useless. They're much less strong than I expected or remembered at least, so basically they're not doing anything. This is what I was doing while playing the battle, microing this little situation. Some enemy cav caught some of my horse archers and killed most of them, but then I managed to get revenge with my other horse archers and clear all that up. The enemy's cav here are just going to gradually die to my slingers and extremely slowly to the towers. The towers kill like 3 or 4 guys a minute or something. They shoot quite slowly, they're not guaranteed to hit, and it doesn't kill an enemy all the time when it hits. So yes, it doesn't have a huge effect, especially when there's a huge blob of infantry like this and you need to get a lot of kills to convince them to leave. In fact, the main issue we have is that many of these infantry units can throw javelins, and they are doing so. I kind of knew this while playing, but I figured they were only throwing at our frontline units, which would be a good idea because they've glitched out and turned their flank onto the enemy. But many of them are actually throwing at our general. That's pretty sneaky, and I didn't notice this happening at all while I was playing. It's a little bit of a case of white projectile trails on a white background, making it hard to tell where the enemy ranged units are attacking. At least the enemy's first army, attacking in the west, has been completely taken down. That's their general's unit going down there, and we did kill that first general. So the fight is going to be all about that one blob. Our baggage train's about to rout from the casualties they're taking. In fact, I think they did rout. And just there, if you looked very closely, our king died. He got taken down by the Javs, and that's real bad news, because he was really high level, and in the more short term, now we have a morale shock, plus our heavy cav units out of the fight, effectively. So what are we going to do about this situation? The enemy can't really get into our fort because the barricades and the walls have blocked the majority of them from doing anything, but so many of them have javelins that they have routed several units inside the fort already, and the balance bar's very much in their favour. They might be able to gradually kill us from the front. I've got all these cav about, but they're all light cav, and the question is, can they do anything to this blob, which can easily just send other units out in other directions to attack us? At least at the front, things aren't progressing very quickly. They eventually smash a tiny path through the barricade and a few troops can attack, but they're attacking our hoplite style unit in shield wall, so it's going to take them a long time to get anywhere. We've got some time to come up with a plan, but really nothing's happening. In principle, the delay could cause the towers to gradually kill the enemy, but as I mentioned, that has no noticeable effect. You can sometimes see the towers killing people, but it doesn't happen to any reliable degree. Eventually what I did was, well, this. I just took all of my Jav cav and thought, well, we'll charge into the enemy blob and see what happens. This was a bit later when the blob wasn't such an imposing shape. We can hit a nice flat bit at the back and get loads of rear attacks. And I do mean loads of rear attacks because look at this. The way the blob is set up and the way the game works means that I'm technically rear attacking the guys at the front, because if, say, one guy from the foremost unit was stuck at the back due to all the pathfinding and moshing, that's considered to be a rear attack on the whole unit, even if most of the unit wouldn't have noticed. So we do get some big morale shocks, and we see lots of enemy units actually rout and start leaving the blob. This was great. I got my horse archers to charge in and start slaughtering them as they went. We could pick up loads of kills here potentially. However, being among the enemy gives the horse archers the formation breached debuff, plus with the general being dead, that's enough to actually rout that unit right there, and in fact, all of my horse archers eventually routed during the process of attacking these fleeing enemy soldiers, so that absolutely sucks. That damages our ability to capitalize on this situation. Anyway, back to the Javcav, they do the same thing again. I charge in one more time to attack the blob again, and you can see the enemy already on the verge of routing. So this was actually surprisingly easy to solve. The blob looks so imposing, but just attacking it with a load of scout cavalry has defeated the entire thing, and suddenly this is a massive rout. The only problem is, as I said, my men aren't able to chase the enemy down, so it looks like they might escape. And because the enemy are mostly a reinforcement army, you can't just say end battle and the game will delete half of them like it would do if it was the first army. That thing doesn't work on reinforcement armies for some reason, possibly a glitch, possibly just weird design. So that means we do have to kill everyone on the field manually for these kills to count. And that of course means some very laggy experiences playing on max speed. The only good news is that the lag is gradually fading away as more and more enemy bodies cease to be animated. Anyway, so we kill as many guys as we can, letting only a few escape in the end. And here's what we end up with. Another heroic victory. We've pulled it out again and the enemy force is totally wrecked. Our army still in okay-ish condition. Looks like it's in good enough condition to fight a battle against an enemy garrison in fact, which is just what we need. But the loss of our king is really souring. As I mentioned, he was like level 4 or 5 with tons of buffs, especially to replenishment, so that's going to slow the campaign down in general, not having him available. Nobody likes change, so I replace our dead king with a guy who looks exactly the same, well, the replacement of being a general, that is. Our actual new king is a newly spawned guy. It suddenly said someone came of age, and it's this guy here. He came of age at like 40 or something. I don't know what's going on. I think the game just spawned a new king for us because we didn't have anyone in the dynasty who could actually be the king under the rules. I'm generally ignoring the politics completely. I never open these screens, so if there's a civil war, it will just happen and we'll deal with it. That's the way we're playing. I'm absolutely phobic of the Rome 2 politics system and refuse to look at it. Anyway, back to the military stuff. All we need to do is march north and take out the remnants of those two enemy armies. However, our guy is greyed out. We have no movement points for some reason. I figured it was this spy. He might have got a critical sabotage on us, which stops you from moving. But actually it says here he did try to sabotage us and failed. So that shouldn't have done anything, but we can't move. Maybe this is because of the general being replaced. Does that cause you to lose your movement points? I'm pretty sure it doesn't, but something has happened. Also, interestingly, I can change stance, even to stances that require you to have movement points. So I can start an ambush, I just can't move. I don't know what's going on, and it's really annoying because now the enemy is going to get away and we're going to waste another turn. I did try to sabotage the enemy so they wouldn't move away so far, but that failed. Anyway, so we're going to have to just let them go. And then this happens, exactly the sort of thing we were rushing because of the fact that someone might just invade us, and it's the Leugoz. Again, they're going to do it. So that makes going after Chronos especially risky because our entire domain will be open to invasion. And indeed, an invasion begins already with a half stack of Leugoz troops making their way down. So I could go back to defend against that. But that's just not the campaign we're playing. We're going to move on and make the attack anyway. Because of my army traditions, I can move slightly further than these two enemy stacks, and that allows me to catch up this turn just about. I can auto-resolve both of them at the same time. So there we go, I ended up getting the finishing auto-resolve that I was looking for, just about. However, after all that, our army really is now in bad condition. We've got like 3 melee units between all of our half-dead melee unit regiments. Anyway, we're going to have to see what we can do with that because we've committed to going in that direction. So yes, the Leugoz can now attack our holdings in Lugia from both the north and the south, and they're currently doing it from the north already. We don't really have the cash flow to stop them from doing this, but I'm going to try and do something. I get our cheapest possible general and give him a couple of the cheapest possible units, and that's just going to have to be our defense force. So we can use him to supplement garrisons and get like a stack of troops together, but a stack of pure trash. So we'll see if that can do anything to hold the enemy off. Now, we're going to make things worse for ourselves because we need to declare war on the Scordisci right now, because next turn we might potentially unify Lugia, and that will complete the current game chapter, and our bonus objectives need to be done by then. So I set up an ambush on the road into the Scordisci territory, ready to defend against any possible invasions coming down it. Up north we can see more Leugoz action. The force that was invading us before seems to have gone back, but a new one has appeared over towards the northwest, meaning the position where I recruited my little defensive army is now not very good. They need to rush over towards the main city. Anyway, here's the action. The Scordisci are brought into diplomacy and I randomly declare war on them. The gods will give me 500 coins if I do this or something, so that's the reason. It does mean, though, that we're approaching the end of Chapter 1 with 0 trade relationships, and it is just impossible to get any. It's impossible to do any diplomacy for some reason at this stage. Absolutely nobody likes us, even the guys who do. They don't even want non-aggression. So we're going to have to just ignore that objective. Now we go for Chronos and attempt to justify declaring that war. The battle we get is interesting because the enemy did recruit a new general, meaning we can actually get a siege draw out here. But that balance bar looks real bad and made me think, wait a minute, we actually really don't have any melee units and the enemy have loads of those Germanic warriors who caused me trouble before. So between all of those units, they can probably defeat my main line with just the Javs or something. And I started thinking this actually could be impossible. We're going to be severely outflanked. Obviously there's always the chance for Slinger and Javcab micro, but in the end I did something quite incredible for this campaign. I decided not to attack them. I eventually hit the retreat button and moved slightly away. The thought here was that we can try and do this attack, but I can't do it this turn annoyingly. If I attack the town instead of the general and don't do a siege draw out, it actually might be better in this circumstance because with the enemy defending the town, while I can't rear attack them as easily, they'll be focused on defending specific points and not attacking me, meaning their overall numbers advantage won't matter that much because most of them probably won't do anything for most of the battle, so that's the plan there. But while we wait, the Scordisci do not wait to attack us, and it turns out they attack us through the entrance to our territory that I didn't defend, the one without a road. I guess their main stack was sitting in the city just over there, and easily came over to auto-resolve to death my little garrison. Handily, they don't occupy the territory, they just sacked it, so we keep control. But the sacking destroys some farms there, and it ruins public order. The farms thing is more important though, because we are actually struggling for food at the moment, and it's made worse when the Leugoz besiege the main settlement up in Lugia, which was also producing food with one of its buildings. So food is going to be an ongoing concern, and the potential for getting attrition, for lack of it, is now going to be looming. And, back over at Chronos, the enemy general attacks me again, so we end up with the same battle we were looking at before, with a couple of differences. The balance bar looks a bit better for some reason, and, as I quickly discovered, much to my amusement, this is a bridge battle. There's a bridge just outside the settlement, and while we're deploying on the same side as most of the enemy troops, that can change, and the narrow crossings will help mitigate our melee disadvantage. So join me next time to see what we can do with this.